Hello and welcome to another episode of the Carp Coach. This time around we're going to be looking at getting bites in the spring, and in particular getting bites in mega high pressure, which is, you know, early spring, always big high pressure comes in. Lakes don't fish particularly well. You know, a lot of people believe that early spring lakes fish their absolute head off, but really they don't. The fish are just coming out of their winter slumber, and it's all about making the most of sort of the small windows of opportunity, and probably more importantly catching carp up off the bottom. You know, a lot of these carp now, the water's freezing cold, you get a lovely warm day like it is today, the fish come straight up off the bottom. They can be very tricky to catch, and it's all about locating where the fish are, getting the right depth, and and catching fish. But this is the first of the day, and this was taken on a zig after making 4 or 5 different changes. I've not been here that long, but I've made quite a lot of changes in the short time that I've been here, because there has been fish showing over where I'm fishing, so I know I'm in the right area, but it's just a case of getting the colour right and getting the depth right. But for now, focus on getting this one in and hopefully have a carp to show you. Love, really good looking fish that is, like proper fully scaled. It's not the types of fish I'm used to catching where I fish. It's got a whole season's worth of scales combined, this one fish has. Look at that. Carp don't come much better looking than that, I tell you. Looking like he's beaten now. Yes. My first Willow Park carp. That is a nice fish, that. Really nice. Well, I know the area of water that I'm fishing out in front of me is pretty uniform. I've been chopping and changing zigs all morning, different depths, different colours, what have you, but that's the first bite I've actually had. I've not even lost, that's the first fish I've actually hooked. So what I'm going to do is, once that fish is sorted, measure exactly how long that zig is. I'm going to put the other 2 rods at exactly the same depth. You know, that is always a crucial thing, is finding that depth that they're feeding at, because them 2 there might be 4, 6, 8 inches shorter or longer than that rod there, but that was the middle rod. They're all literally within a few yards of each other distance wise. So to me, if that's gone with that depth and that colour, the other 2 have got to go on it at least for a couple of hours, just to see if anything else is out, they're going to have a go. So sort the fish out, unhook him, measure them 2 up, and rods back out, and we're fishing again. And there's still a few fish showing about out there, so it's looking good. Hopefully, now that the depth's right and the colour's right, hopefully there's a few more bites to be had. As I was saying, the importance of, once you've had a fish on a zig a particular depth, you know, the importance of measuring exactly the same, so you know that when you bring the other 2 rods in, you've got the depth perfect. So what I've done is I've taken the zig off of the clip, hooked it in the tip eye of the rod, and I've literally run the zig parallel down the rod, and I know then that the top whipping of the butt eye is the exact depth that I caught that fish from. So now I can get this one back out, the other 2 bring them in. Obviously if they're shorter, I'll re-tight so that's a bit longer. If they're a little bit longer than this particular depth, I'll chop them down and make them all exactly the same. So now, you know, it's a good reference to know that any zig that I've caught a fish on is the depth of that. I'm literally going to chuck this one back out, bring the other 2 back in, and do exactly the same with them, and see how that goes. You know, I've caught a fish at that depth. You know, maybe there's something in it, maybe there isn't. But for now, I'm going to put all 3 on exactly the same depth, and hopefully there's more fish to be had. There we go. What an absolutely stunning Willow Park fully scaled. I ain't had many fully scaled in my time, so to catch one for the camera's absolutely amazing. This one was taken on a zig, as you can probably see by the sun beating down on my face. Even though at the back end of winter, the weather is almost spring-like. It's t-shirt weather today, 15, 18 degrees, but there's not a breath of wind and the pressure's sky high. Now, unless you're fishing a lake where you can actively see them feeding in the edge, the only time that you're probably going to catch these fish out in the open water is on a zig. So zigs have definitely paid off today, chopping and changing, getting the depth right, getting the colour right. and with the weather that we've got forecast over sort of the next 24 hours and overnight, I'm going to take the gamble and I'm going to stick with zigs. But if this is the only one I catch, what an absolutely stunning carp. Right, so a bit of a mad dash. I'm going to pack up. One of the pegs where a lot of the fish have been today has just become free, and with it being a day ticket, if you don't act fast, you know, someone could go in there tomorrow and I'll be left thinking that if I'd have gone round and maybe I'd have caught a few more. So I've had a fish from here, but that peg gives me the opportunity to get on the bulk of fish, so I'm going to quickly throw some gear on the barrow and I'm going to head round there. Well, I've made the move, only a short walk round the bank, but this swim literally gives me so much more water, and it's water as well where the fish are. You know, I've seen them here all day, cruising, showing, everything. So this time of year, even though they're active, they're not really going to go that far. So I know tonight that the chances are the fish are going to be in this area, and it gives me, you know, good water and a lot of fish to fish for tomorrow as well. I'm going to go with exactly the same tactics. The depth that I caught on earlier was 6 foot 6 inches, so all three rods are on exactly the same. Got probably about an hour, hour and a half now before it gets dark, so I'm going to leave them on at exactly the same depth. The fish are still cruising, they're behaving no different to what they were earlier, but probably when it gets darker I might take a foot off of them to drop them down to say 5.5 feet for the night. But for now I'm going to put these back out, and hopefully there's one more bite before it gets too dark. And you can see over there, one has literally showing me exactly where to chuck to. Perfect. There it is, another absolutely stunning willow pipe, fully scaled. Made a few changes last night, I'll show you them in a bit. Basically just drop the zigs down and give them a little tweak. Nothing through the hours of darkness, didn't even hear anything show. The odd time that I was awake, had a little listen, didn't hear anything at all, which was quite weird. And bang on first light, literally one of them dropped back to the floor, and this was the culprit. But since I started playing this fish, I've noticed that there's quite a lot of fish that's out in front of me now that are actually up on the surface, so I may well have missed a trick last night. Dropping down may not have been the thing to have done, but I wasn't to know, so you know, learn from your mistakes. But for now the fish certainly look like they're back up in the upper layers. But second one of these, second fully scaled, absolutely amazing. What a stunning carp. One of the biggest elements with zig fishing is obviously finding the exact depth of water that you've got out in front of you, or an area of water that you've got out in front of you. Now, if you fish the venue quite regularly, you might not need to chuck a float out because you might know exactly how deep it is. But this is the first time I've ever been to Willow Park. A few lads have said it's 6 foot, some said it's 7, and a few said it drops down to 8 foot. So, you know, it's hard to gauge sort of what they're saying, whether they're right or whether they're wrong. So the best thing to do is to set a float up and find out for yourself. Now, the area that I'm fishing controls quite a bit of water. There's actually just another fish that's crashed out there now. I've seen quite a few fish in one particular area, so I'm going to search that out first. Now, I'm not overly fussed by making 4 or 5 chucks with this, because like I said, I've got a fair area of water to fish there, and if there's a bit of a plateau or a bit of a drop, you know, I don't want to be chucking that 5 foot zig onto a 4 foot plateau, or a 5 foot zig down into an 8 foot, you know, into an 8 foot trough. So I'm going to probably have 4 or 5 chucks, get the depth, know exactly what sort of depth is in what area, make a note of it, and I know then that when I'm chucking my zigs out, I'm fishing perfectly. And to be honest, with how the weather is today, freezing cold nights and boiling hot days, I want to be fishing within sort of 10 inches of the surface. So that's what I'm trying to achieve. So I'm going to fling the float out now, mark the depth, make a note of it, and hopefully I can be fishing exactly where the fish are. Right, I've had a few chucks now. It's actually quite interesting because, as I said, this peg commands quite a lot of water, but on the right hand side of the swim, it's only 4 foot deep at about 80-85 yards, but out to the left, where the fish have been showing, is about 6.5 feet. So the fish that I caught yesterday, I mean, there's actually a fish literally just jumped right next to the float that I've popped up. Yesterday, the fish that I had was on a 6'6" zig, so I must have been brimming the surface. So I'm going to target the area of sort of 6.5 feet of water now, and then as it warms up through the day, maybe the fish are going to start pushing up this end of the lake in the shallow water. But like I say, it's interesting because I would have just chucked a 6 foot zig out basically over the 4 foot of water had I not chucked a float out. So it's always massively crucial to find the exact depth that you're fishing. But for now, I haven't got to use the float again now, so the disturbance is out of the way. Make the disturbance, 4 or 5 chucks, job done, and now I know exactly where I'm chucking, what depth zig to use, and hopefully chopping and changing the colours might bring a few more bites as well. So for now, I'm going to make a note of that. I'm going to put it in the clip as well, just as a reference. So if I wrap it up and it's say 22, 23 rod lengths, I know then that if I'm in and around that area, that the zigs that I'm using are the exact depth for the area that I'm fishing over. So I'm going to ping him in the clip, crank him in, and I'm going to get all 3 zigs into that zone out there, which is where a lot of the fish have been showing. When it comes to fishing with zigs, you know, it isn't just a case of chucking 3 pieces of foam out there, clip the bobbin on and away it goes. We've all had days, yeah, where you do turn up, you put 3 zigs out there and lo and behold, one of them's off straight away, which, you know, that's a nice easy day because straight away you've sussed it, you found what colour, depth, etc. that they're on straight away, and you haven't really had to work hard for it. But this particular session, you know, for me, it's been a real head scratcher. I've never fished here before, but, you know, I know how to fish a zig and I know sort of when to change things and when not to change things. But this one's been, you know, it's been quite tricky because the fish are quite visual, you know, they're easy to see. Obviously it's a bit more up and down than what I first thought, so getting the depth right and the location right has been a key. But, you know, you've also got other factors as well. You've got your different colours that you can try. Don't just assume that if everyone's telling you a certain colour that that's the best colour to use, because if everyone's chucking a piece of yellow foam out, then it's obvious that everyone's going to be catching on a piece of yellow foam. But you might find that you might put, say, a yellow aligner and a black foam on, a red aligner and a red piece of foam, and you might be catching more fish than the people either side or opposite you. So, you know, you've got the different colours, you know, they're obviously a massive sort of edge by chopping and changing. Bright day like this, probably my go-to colour would be something with black in, you know, black silhouettes against the sunlight. It's a lot more visual than any of the other colours underwater, certainly to the fish that are below them looking up. So black is always a very, very good starting colour. But, you know, other things as well, you've got your flavours, you can spray different flavours onto them. Some people just chuck it straight out the packet, straight into the water, but for me, I like to add something to it. if you're putting your pop-ups out at night on the bottom, the chances are you would have like soaked them in a bit of liquid, given them a spray before you chucked them out. So you've got your different, you know, your different flavours as well. But yeah, when it comes to zigs, you know, it is literally more than just chucking 3 pieces of foam out. You know, despite what a lot of people think, I'll just put a zig out and see how it goes. There's so many different things that you can try. You know, you've got, like I said, you've got your colours. You know, you've got your different colours, zig, like your zig aligners, your zig foam, your different flavours, your different depths. So, you know, there's a lot of things to chop and change, and, you know, you might just stumble across a combination that catches more than what another one will do. One massive edge that's probably got me out of jail more than once with zigs is adding maggots to the back of a zig aligner. Now, we all know that this time of year carp absolutely love maggots. Days like today when the pressure's high, and certainly at night as well, you know, when there's no ripple, you know, just quickly, I think when there's ripple on the lake, it makes the zigs sort of work a lot better because they're constantly moving. But by adding maggots to the back, you know, a lot of people think that when you chuck them out, they're instantly dead, but they're not. They have still got an element of movement, and they are moving around. But one, like I say, massive edge is adding maggots to the back of a zig aligner. Now, with the zig aligner, obviously you have the band that holds the foam on, which lends itself perfectly to passing a needle through, tying off your bait floss, and you've got a perfectly presented bunch of maggots. Now, last night, or should I say first thing this morning, the zigs that I put on through the hours of darkness, I put maggots on top of all of them, purely because there's not a lot going on out there. I know there's a lot of carp out there, there's no ripple as such, and the only bit of movement or scent out there is going to be off of the maggots. This morning, bang, off it goes. Now, by adding these, it just obviously adds a different aspect to a zig. It's moving, all right, it looks a little bit bulkier, but carp absolutely love maggots, and by adding them to the back of a zig aligner, it just gives it that little edge over anything else that's out there. So literally, you're tying up your zig exactly how you normally would, you know, putting your piece of foam on. Now, again, when you're putting the maggots on, I would probably increase the foam slightly, because obviously the maggots are naturally going to be trying to sink, and if you've got a small piece of foam on there and you want to add maggots to it, you know, it might affect the buoyancy of it, and I want it to be sat up proud all through the night. So first things first, take your needle, length of bait floss, and you can thread, you know, I mean, on this one alone, there's 10 maggots on here, so it's, you know, it's a fair mouthful for the carp, but even if you just want to put 3 or 4 on, so thread them on. These are white maggots. White maggots for me just give me the best visual aspect. Take your needle and thread, you know, say anywhere between sort of like 4 and 10 maggots on there. Pass them onto the bait floss, and then you just can get the needle, you can hook it under one side of the band, poke it back out the other side. You don't have to penetrate the foam at all. Pull it through, and then under tension, you just want to tie 2 or 3 overhand knots. You don't want to tie them down really tight, because obviously the bait floss will cut through the zig aligner band. 3 or 4 overhand knots just to ensure they're not coming off, and trim the tag end so you've got about 2 or 3 mil, and they sit proud every time, perfectly on top of the zig. Just going to run you through the setup that I've been using now. New product, zig leg clip setup. First things first, I'll just run you through the basics. Naked line tail rubber, got your leg clip, the pin there to hold the swivel in, obviously onto your hook link. But what's different about this, and what I've noticed, I've got this one on one setup, and then I've got my standard swivel zig setup, if you like, on the other 2 rods. What I've noticed with this is how much reduced line twist I've had in the zig. Now, the reason for that is the swivel that's inside this, and it comes with the kit, is a ball bearing swivel. Now, what that basically means is it's a lot more free moving than a traditional swivel. So when the rig's coming back through the water, it isn't twisting up. The ball bearing inside the swivel is actually keeping up with the zig as it's coming in, and therefore reducing the line twist. Obviously, you can see that's held in place by the T-peg there, so the swivel isn't going to come out. And on there, I've looped to loop the hook link. Now, the anti-tangle sleeve, that comes with like a bit of a, you know, a bit of a wider part on the end of the anti-tangle sleeve. And what that does is that pushes onto the eye of the swivel. The idea of these is that you don't ram it right up underneath the leg clip to form almost like a solid boom. What you want to do is you want to push it just on just so it won't be coming off onto the swivel, so the swivel can still move freely. So when hook links coming in, it's still moving. If you was to ram that right up underneath the leg clip, you're basically reducing the movement of the swivel, and you're going to get you're going to get a coiled hook link. Therefore, you're going to get more use out of it when you put the sleeve down like so. Sleeve on, hook link, 15-pound zig and floater line. Now, wherever I go, whether it be coming here for the first time, going up to linear, wherever, I will always use a 15-pound zig hook link. The reason for that is you don't know what's out there. The last thing you want to be doing is using a light line, coming into contact with a snag. You're getting a break off. 15-pound, nice and strong, nice and robust, and I know that if I'm hooking a fish, that's the least of my worries. Down onto the hook end. So this particular zig 6 foot, which seems to be the depth it's been producing. Onto the hook end, I've got a size 6 wide gate beak. That's a barbless there. The fishery rules barbless. That's a barbless hook. Again, a big hook and strong line. As I said before, if you're hooking into a fish, whether it be on the bottom or in the upper layers, you don't want to be playing that fish thinking that, I've got a small hook on, I've got to play it like a bit of a fairy. Anything could go wrong, especially when it's under the tip and they're having a little bit of a thrash round. And certainly, with these leg clips the way they are, you can push the tail rubber on that little bit further just to ensure that the lead's not going to come off when you're playing the fish or when you get the bite. But should you come under any sort of unfortunate circumstance where your line parts, that the lead can still eject from the leg clip. So I'm fishing these so the leads don't come off. But as a whole, nice and simple. That's the setup I use. Perfectly safe, minimises line twist, and certainly works. What about that to end the session with down here at Willow Park? It's been absolutely fantastic. Been quite frustrating, on paper the weather's been fantastic, but fishing, it hasn't been so good. Been quite frustrating watching them showing out there and, not getting loads of bites, which is what you can expect if you come to Willow at the right time of the year. But by ringing the changes, chopping and changing the depths, experimenting with different colour variations has led to the capture of a few fish and a few stunning fish too. Hopefully, if you watch this, you'll pick up a few tips, and next time you're out on the bank, you can put into practice what you've learned and fire a few zigs out and hopefully nail a few carp.